This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary Dehart, and I am the publisher of Insightful Accountant and the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My guest today is Karen DePrizio, who is the Director of Marketing and Sales with the Herbert H. Landy Insurance Agency out of the greater Boston area. Right, Karen?
That's right.
Yeah, and Landy has been a longtime supporter of Insightful Accountant, so we certainly appreciate that. And this is the first time we've had anybody from Landy on the podcast, so welcome. And you're the newbie around town, right?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very new with Landy, and I'm excited to be here. We have a great year coming up. It is going to be the 75th anniversary of Landy Insurance.
Oh, is it really? Wow, I did not realize that. Okay, that's fantastic. So, all right, before podcasts and before my webinars, I usually ask some really goofy question that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. So, with the sun going down in the background back there with you, so we'll go with weather. Weather's easy, right? So it's November the 28th, the day we're filming this. Currently 4:21 Eastern time. What's the temperature outside in the greater Boston area?
Right now it fluctuates so much in a given day. It could be 40 about right now, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think it's going to count to 30s tonight.
Oh, that's actually not too far. I'm in the Atlanta area, not too different than what we have. My computer is saying it's 46 degrees here. And I think tonight we're supposed to get right at freezing, maybe just a little bit below freezing. So, but we won't have much snow, which I doubt.
We did have up in the Vermont area. We've already had snow. We just had snow last night. So,
yeah, we had one of our writers. She's actually a practitioner, but she writes for us. She lives up in about 2 hours outside of Portland, Maine, and she said last week we were on the phone, it was like 17 degrees already. Woo, that's cold. That's cold. So that's what we love about the South. So other than weather, we're actually going to be talking about cybercrime, cyber insurance, cyber security, kind of as, I guess, the big picture, kind of the umbrella of topic of discussion. So so when we're talking about cybercrime, Karen, I mean, we all hear about it and we get inundated by what's the company that advertises all the time to lock your credit or what have you. But so who does cybercrime?
I think they're credit lock. Yes, credit lock.
Yeah. Yeah. And so who is it impacting? I mean, our audience is primarily, public accounting professionals, but who's impacted by cybercrime?
So that's a very good question. What's interesting is that when you really look at who is affected, somebody would say any company that uses email, has social media accounts, and collects any information, personal information about clients or consumers. And in this day and age, that is most likely almost every business. So I don't know anybody who does business these days that not on email. But right. I would say accounting is one of the areas that they are very specifically targeted due to the fact that they do have financial data on clients.
Right. And a lot of it, right? And a lot of very sensitive data for, it could be hundreds of individuals and businesses just in one firm, right? So high target of opportunity for the criminal organizations, right?
Yes.
And so since your insurance is what you guys do, so based on what we just said, right, that everybody's the target. So my assumption is everybody needs some type of cyber insurance, right? I mean,
correct. Absolutely. Yes. I would say personally that everybody needs cyber insurance.
Right. And what does that typically look like? Like what is cyber insurance? It might mean 10 different things to 10 different people, but from an insurance, I guess Landy's an agency. So from the agency's perspective, what is cyber insurance and what does that really look like to a business owner?
So cyber insurance itself would be considered a separate product from what accountants usually get in their errors and omissions or their E&O insurance or their personal liability insurance. So that would be one type of insurance. The nice thing about what Landy does is that we do specialize in business insurance as a whole. So though we do have a lot of people coming to us for E&O where they're required to have it, or that is the basic insurance that they would know they would need, cyber insurance would be another policy that would work with that together with other types of insurance. And they might have a business owner's policy as well for their personal space or offices they own or an at-home business. But the cyber insurance is very particular for cyber crimes.
And what would that typically cover? And if there's any questions that are off limits or that you can't say just from a regulation standpoint, certainly just say, well, I can't really talk about that. But
sure. No, the nice thing about cyber insurance is that it's what it does is it covers both first party and third party. So for first party would be the individual, the business that takes it out, and then third party would be other people. So what that then tends to be is the liability. So it would be everything from costs to restore data, loss of business income due to productivity or not having equipment available, all the way to legal fees for liability costs for damage to others.
Okay. Okay. And now we may be getting too technical for this call, but what goes into, I'm not an insurance guy, but what goes into the ratings for determining what the expenses are for let's say an accounting firm? And again, if it's something that shouldn't be discussed on a podcast, that's fine. I'm just interested to know what is it when a company looks at like an accounting firm, how do they get rated and what impacts the premium?
That is a great question. I will tell you that I'm not personally in underwriting, but I can tell you when we do have our webinar, we're going to have our president of our company on, and she can definitely go into more detail on this. But I can't tell you that one of the factors is the income of the business, the amount of business that the amount of revenue is one factor.
Okay. I imagine number of employees probably, or number that have access to data and things like that. So
yes, okay. Exactly.
Yeah. But actually, that's probably not a fair question for a podcast, but just as we were talking, it's like, well, that I would like to know what the answer is to that. So I'll have to make sure I'm on the webinar that we're hosting on January 9th for you. So when we let's bounce back over just to the criminal side of this, and that's kind of, it's all driven by the criminal side. But so what's out there today? Like what are you guys seeing, or what are we seeing in the marketplace, the tricks that are being used to get into our data?
Yes, there are a lot of people are familiar with the types of cyber crimes that happen that include phishing. There's a newer one that's called vishing, phishing would be where people are looking to get into your email account, and vishing is a voice message where they would call you up and leave messages that might sound like a bank or a client themselves, or some type of thing that would make you think that you need to respond to it. The other types are called baiting, and then there's water holing. Water holing is where the cyber criminals would go to an area that an accountant would typically go to, a website, a trusted website, and they put their malicious links in there. And another thing that happens is that you might go to somewhere where you feel it is reputable, and you might be downloading a piece of software freeware that you want to do to, or there might be an Excel spreadsheet, that template that you want to download. And so you're quickly clicking around and it looks completely legitimate because there's a big download green button and you're clicking on it. But the way that there's advertising or other things on the page, you're unaware that it's actually installing malware on your system.
Right. Okay. And so, actual water holing. So I guess what that's about, or where it got the name, right, is like a watering hole. Like every day after work, you go to the watering hole, to your local pub. That's funny. What happened? Do you know what happened out in Vegas? Like whatever it was, 2-3 months ago, when they basically locked down. I don't know if it was Caesars or MGM. Do you know how that transpired?
I'm not familiar with that particular that particular situation, but I believe it was a ransomware, which
Okay.
is ransomware is very interesting because I think the small and medium-sized business would assume that, and myself included, as somebody who is working as a consultant for other small businesses, I wouldn't necessarily think that a small business would be a victim of ransomware. I would think it would be a larger institution, but it's actually 1 in 6 businesses experience a ransomware
Wow.
attack, which is a much higher statistic than I would have assumed myself.
Yeah, it's a scary high statistic, right? I mean, it's locked your
Yes.
business up. Okay.
And,
So what about?
it creates the most expensive losses, somewhere of $300,000 to $400,000 per loss.
No
In a
kidding.
situation like that.
Okay. And so it's most of that. So one of the questions was around phishing, and it's been around a while, and phishing with the PH. Why is it such a common threat? What is it about that one particular tool, I guess we'll call it?
Because cyber criminals can get in, or just hackers, they can get in, and a lot of our data. So I know this from being a marketer. So there are so many tools out there to go into databases and collect people's email addresses by industry. And I think that's why there are particular industries that are more targeted. So for instance, if you've ever registered a website, suddenly, you're getting a lot of solicitations to building a website or to put your business out on Google or that type of thing. So the same goes for the accounting industry. There are so many tools out there that marketers have to pull together a set of email addresses that they can target a large amount of people and get accurate email addresses for those individuals. The other aspect of this, so as a particular sort of example from nowadays, the thing that is, a lot of us have become aware. We can kind of, as we're surfing the web, opening our email, we feel pretty knowledgeable to be able to tell if something is a phishing email. But due to AI and a lot of graphic improvements, it's becoming more difficult to detect because they can easily parody or create like fake accounts and look like a legitimate software business. So a lot of software that would be used as a proprietary system within the accounting industry, a brand name could be used on an email and it looks very legitimate. So even the name that it comes through would look legitimate. If you then click on the email address, a lot of times you can see that it would be that it's not a legitimate email address. But if you're moving quickly and you're not sort of really thinking about this type of threat, and you click on one of those emails, it could say, oh, we don't have you need to update your password, all this, two-factor authentication is key for security, but it also can be a reason that you think someone's looking for information from you, and you go in and you log in, and then now they have your email login and password, and you don't even know they have it. And with transferring money around in different types of industries, that's where they can then watch email and wait for another cyber crime would be social engineering.
Okay.
Where social engineering would be they're actually using information about you in particular from social media accounts and from your actual emails.
And what about baiting? I'm not familiar with that. I heard that term recently, but what is baiting?
Baiting would be an offer or something like something free or a discount, click here and get, so you're really using, again, this very much aligns with a lot of things marketers do, which,
Right.
you know, and they're basically using very, very fine-tuned marketing ploys where we all like to get a discount or a reward.
Right.
I think a lot of people know there might be the type of thing where it pops up and it says, oh, you got a free iPhone. And a lot of people will recognize that. So there are things we've always recognized and people will avoid those. It's changing rapidly. And that's where the danger is when you as an individual have all the sensitive data on your machine and you have employees that have people sensitive data. So as a principal of a company or as an individual consultant, you're then liable for everything your employees are doing online as well.
Right. And that, yeah, and that just never ends, right? So we talked about ransomware and malware, and I think, was it 400,000? I think you said was basically the average expense to clean that up.
I believe offhand it's 485,000 would be a typical loss for a medium-sized business ransomware.
Wow. Okay. So AI is being leveraged. You were just saying AI is being leveraged by the bad guys. Is it also being leveraged by the good guys? Or are you guys, insurance companies, and I guess I would call frontline defenders leveraging AI as well?
I can't say in cyber security. That's actually a really good question. That's a good question. I think that detecting, you know, I'm sure financial institutions are using that type of detection to help when they know that you have something that's outside of your, they can use geo information to know the charge was made somewhere that you're probably not. So I think from institutions, not necessarily on the agency side as of yet, but with accountants using more AI to do regular tasks, that makes their systems more vulnerable as well. So the AI does have a lot of positive and negative implications.
Right. Yeah. Not really thought about that perspective on it. So what about, so how is it, well, we just talked about how it's changing, but so what have you seen, or what has either Landy seen, or what kind of, I'm sure you guys have all kinds of news information, insurance news sources that you read, but kind of what's some real life examples that are being pulled on people? And if you have anything specific in tax and accounting, that would be fantastic.
Yes. This is something Betsy's going to actually go into more detail on of the webinar because, with particular examples. So for me, it would really be a lot of the ones we covered, which would be the getting something in your email that would make you then click to fill out information. I mean, I would think from the individual user standpoint, that is one of the ones that I think it's just very prevalent. And then the other thing that's interesting with AI is that there's this voice replication happening. So people can have a very small recording, like an outgoing message of somebody's voice, and then replicate their voice with AI. So when it comes to the phishing or telephone sort of social engineering type of crime, that would be something that you could sound like somebody else in your company looking for particular information. And so an employee would think, oh, so-and-so needs something from me, and send it right along.
Right. So yeah, sorry, I've got to go get my insurance policy and update my malware. Or I guess my whatever my defender is. But so what about what's the best practices, or what are some best practices to avoid, for businesses to avoid, falling into this trap, any of these traps, because there's lots of them that are set out there for us.
That's a great question. That's a great question. And I would say being protected with a policy is helpful. The other thing that really comes from engaging with an insurance company is that education piece. So a lot of times there's risk management, there's additional risk management training. In some regards, there are, in some types of policies, there are trainings you can attend that actually help reduce your premium, because that is how important education is, because they know that if you have it front of mind and you're becoming educated on the latest techniques that could make you vulnerable, and knowing about, especially from an accountant standpoint, the other big aspect of this would be cybersecurity. So creating things like secure passwords and making sure that your platforms, educating your employees and your clients to not send you personal data. So a lot of people are aware of that, but when people are coming and going, like, here's my, they send a document that has their social security number on it. And so again, if somebody has already obtained your email password, you might not know that for quite a while. And that's when someone becomes very vulnerable to something like that.
So how does cyber insurance play into, so I get hacked and then what happens? Like, okay, I'm ransomware or what have you, whatever. I've been attacked and my systems are locked up. Where does what happens from an insurance perspective?
Insurance can help in a lot of areas when it comes to even knowing resources to send machines to get malware off. So there's that immediate once you know that there's been a breach or a breach of data, there's restoring data. If it's ransomware, it's knowing how to move through that. So as we all know from small things that happen with credit card fraud and this and that, these things are very time consuming. So again, I really think of it as the insurance, the carrier really being a partner in knowing how to go forward. And then the insurance company is also going to know the best way to go forward to mitigate future risk in that situation. So once you have a claim in, you have partners to help you through the process. So it would be recovering data, putting security wells back up, loss of productivity, loss of income, and then liability from having any information from clients put out there that would then cause damage to clients.
Gotcha. Anything else that's covered under that type of policy?
There are other, yes, Richard, another costly thing is notifying people. So if you have a data breach,
right?
Sometimes you think that doesn't, but if you have to send out a large mailing to a large number of clients, or you want to have it reviewed by attorneys, and legal fees, of course, for any of the processes. Another interesting thing whenever you're dealing in a field for law that is sort of untested, those legal fees can be a lot higher than in other industries or for crimes that are sort of more vetted. But when you have, there's a lot of stuff that's unprecedented. So a lot of times they don't know, there's preparation that needs to go in and sort of documenting cases and what was breached and all that process. Those are all activities that would be covered under insurance.
Okay. And it's funny, because on the floor right here, which should be filed somewhere else, but it's not, it's on the floor right here, is a letter from a company that we took a mortgage out with, I don't know, probably 4 years ago. And they had a breach, and, the letter says, we'll provide coverage of LifeLock or what have you. So is that typically something that would come under like an insurance policy like this? Because you said it would also protect the end customer. Would that be something that the insurance company is coming out of pocket for to cover LifeLock for 18 months or whatever that time frame is?
I don't know about particular paying particular services, but I do know that the cost to recover an identity itself, an identity, because that is costly as well, and a lot of a lot of footwork, that is definitely covered. And I think depending on the policy, they would probably offer tools like that to reduce the risk overall. But the cost of restoring an identity and credit rating is another process that can be very time consuming.
Right. And we probably should put an asterisk out there and say that we're not giving insurance advice on this call. This is, talk to your broker or to your agent to get specific details about your own insurance needs and insurance requirements. So there we go. We did the legal coverage of that. But so, and lastly, I think last question we wanted to get into, and that were actually two more. One is we just talked about business interruption, but how about hardware? Is hardware typically something that the insurance company is going to? Are you going to take a look at the hardware? Because you did mention they have resources where you could send your hardware out to, and they would, I guess, get it back, clean it, and get it back up to speed. Is that something that you've seen or Landy has seen where you've had to basically go in and pick up an office's box of computers and ship them out somewhere?
That would definitely, yes. Their machines would have to be looked to any hardware cost to restore data and make sure all malware is off or ransomware is off machines, all those type of expenses. And we do work with different carriers, so there can be, that is something that should be, you can review in a particular policy. With different carriers and in different industries might have different they all kind of cover the general things, but how much coverage you have for each type of incident is something you definitely want to look at closely when selecting a policy.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, and so you're like, oh no, you said you wouldn't put me on the spot. It's nothing bad. We spoke, was it last week when you and I talked?
I think yes.
Okay. And you had COVID, and so you're new in the space. I mentioned the WISP to you, the Written Information Security Plan, that tax and accounting professionals, well, pretty much any financial professional, which I believe the way the FTC has written it is pretty much if you have any kind of financial data of any individual in your possession, you are required to have a WISP. It's not just tax and accounting, it's tax accounting, it's banking, it's financial planning. So again, pretty much anybody that has any kind of, you'd have to read the rules and regs, but you have sensitive data, you probably are required to have a WISP. I don't know, I'm not sure how FTC can enforce any of it, but have you gotten familiar at all with the WISP?
I did. I mean, I'm sure there's a deeper level I could go to, but I don't. Yes.
And I've read through it, but which is a beast. But I don't recall, and this is a very long way to get to my question, and that is, do you know if cyber insurance is a requirement in a WISP?
That I do not know if it's a requirement.
And I don't either. So again, I told you I was going to put you on the spot, but I showed my cards too. I don't know the answer to that question.
No, that's a very good question. But I do think that that goes hand in hand with if you can, it's sort of feeling like again, I have felt, so I'm saying this from as a previous business owner myself, when a lot of times when insurance companies talk to you, they might ask you, do you go online? Do you have any risk of this? And the way something might be posed, you think, oh, that's not me. That's not me. And I think that's why this type of thing is so important. And these webinars are very important, the upcoming webinars, because it just makes us all aware that in addition to us all being online more and more, communicating more often, that the methods that people are coming at us with are becoming more sophisticated, and we as business owners have a liability in that. So I think that once you start thinking about these things, when you go to do a WISP, if you've already discussed with whether you're an individual and you have chosen a software product that maybe you're communicating with your client with that has certain type of security, then you can then add that to your any required that required document itself.
Right.
Like you're creating a plan by being aware of it and actively working on all of the steps that it would take. And that reminds me also of anyone who's collecting information, even just for people that are interested in their services before they've even engaged with them. They have, the GDPR, and now we have our the CCPA. So it's the Europe had passed the rules for the General Data Protection Regulation and the California Consumer Privacy Act. So, and that's why on a lot of websites, people have to say, I accept when you go to their website. So when you're writing those type of privacy policies, I personally feel those really relate as a mark to having a plan of action for your WISP as well.
Right. And so as you were talking, this question kind of came to mind, and then we'll wrap up. And that's around with an insurance company. And again, everybody should have it, right? When you go through the process of onboarding a policy, you would just reference that, you get all the questions, right? And so get your big, thick document, you have to check off all the boxes. So when I'm going through all those questions, when you, as an underwriter and as an agent, when y'all look at those questions and answers, are you, would you then come back, or have you seen people or situations where, I've answered all my questions, and then you come back and you go, well, if you don't correct number 1, 2, and 3, we have nothing else to talk about. There's no way you'd ever get underwritten if you don't correct these 3 things, and then correct those, and then we'll talk again. Is that kind of what the process looks like?
That I don't think actually Betsy can get into more detail with that, because she really understands the underwriting process more. Right now, the nice thing is that a lot of the cyber insurance are just simple applications that might ask, what your like number of employees and some basic information.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then what type of, I think the questions right now are more posed towards what type of data you collect and store. You're absolutely right. Like they might ask, and that's something, we should add to the agenda. We'll make sure Betsy touches upon in the webinar, which is there an additional requirement? Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it would be more of if you've had incidents where you've had cyber attacks previously. That's probably more of a general question right now.
Right, I would bet. So, all right. And so the webinar that you've referenced is titled Outsmart Cyber Threats in the AI Era, Essential Knowledge and Protection. And that is scheduled for January the 9th at noon Eastern. We'll drop the link to that down in the video portion of this. I'm trying to think otherwise the best way to find it, the registration link is going to be to go to insightfulaccountant.com. You'll see it advertised there either as an ad, or you'll see it over in the left-hand column where we run our events, content on our events. And just lastly, is there anything else is going to be covered in that webinar that we haven't talked about already?
So it's Betsy Magnuson has been in the industry for her whole career. Her father started Landy Insurance. Okay. It was Herbert H. Landy Insurance Company, and now we're going by Landy Insurance. So that's why we have the legacy of the 75 years. And in my mind, that really adds that you have a personal connection with the agency. And we have a lot of things rolling out soon from a technology standpoint. And so she will cover that. She's going to cover a little more statistics and then examples from accountant perspective, like examples of types of crimes that will happen. And then definitely things you can do to mitigate your risk.
Okay, fantastic.
Cover.
That's great. Yeah, I've known Landy for, gosh, it's been a long time because prior to launching Insightful Accountant, I worked for Accounting Today and have done business with Landy for a very long time. And they're the one, I guess, insurance company that I really has been pretty steady from a promotional and a marketing standpoint in tax and accounting. And again, I've been going to tax and accounting trade shows for too long. And Landy has pretty much always been there. There's been a couple of others that were in and out, but Landy's been pretty consistent over those. Again, it shocks me to say 16 years that I've been in this space. So we certainly appreciate your support. And then again, the webinar is on January the 9th at noon Eastern. Check it out on insightfulaccountant.com. You'll be able to find the either an ad promoting it or just an edit piece on that left-hand column of the homepage. So Karen, welcome to the tax and accounting profession, coming in hot. 2 weeks you've been? 3 weeks? How long?
Yes, it's in my blood. My father was an accountant, so I feel very much at home, even though he would be very proud of me that I'm in this space.
You're where you belong, right? Not as an accountant, but marketing too and supporting. So your role primary is sales and marketing. Yes. Have you always like to find out where you guys will be exhibiting? Have you, since you're new in the role, you probably don't know this yet, but have you looked out at 2024 for events, like where people can find you?
We're just starting to look at 2024 right now, and what events we're going to do. Yes. So that's very exciting. We have usually we do quite a few events. So we'll see what's going to be on the agenda.
Right. I'm sure we'll see you out and about somewhere. So, well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Out of the Box Technology. Out of the Box Technology is your partner in accounting data services. With over 7,500 industry migrations performed and an expansive network of third-party integrations, a partnership with Out of the Box will augment your advisory practice and turbocharge client accounting operations. Visit outoftheboxtechnology.com/insightful-accountant to get started.